Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, I am very excited for today's show because today's chef, Chef Julia Dunaway, is going to be demonstrating my favorite food in the entire world. I learned how to make it over 20 years ago in culinary school. I forgot how, and she's going to show us. It is vegan sushi. Chef Julia Dunaway. Hi, Julia. How are you?
Hi, Chef AJ. I'm good.
I'm so excited. So you already know how to make sushi.
Well, I've had lots of practice through my life. My mother, who was Japanese, would make it for us when I was a little kid. Of course, I wasn't interested in it, but when I got older, she lived with me for about 6 years, and I was smart enough at that time to say, "Hey, Mom, teach me how to make sushi." So she did,
So you
and
didn't like sushi when you were little?
not really, not too much. It was okay, but at that time, the only sushi in California where we lived, they had one sushi restaurant, and it was really a Japanese restaurant with a sushi bar. And I went there with her a couple times, and it was all the raw fish over rice. And I was a teenager. That didn't appeal to me. But I really learned to like all kinds of sushi when I lived in Japan for 4 years when I was in the military. And then I started, tasting all different kinds of real Japanese sushi. Then I knew at that point that I needed to learn how to make a lot more Japanese food.
Well, so I've been vegan almost 50 years, so I've never tasted raw fish, but it's not the fish that makes sushi, right? I mean, that's not the delicious part, is it?
No, sushi just means vinegared rice. That's all. Sushi is the word for sour rice or vinegared rice. So sushi can be anything from plant-based versions to sushi, nigiri sushi with fish on it or with vegetables on it, or sushi rolls like maki, nori maki, which is maki sushi, or sushi rice inside a piece of seaweed. So sushi does not really mean anything about raw fish. And that's where a lot of people get confused. They'll say, "Oh, I can't eat sushi. I don't want that raw fish." What they're talking about is the sashimi, which is the raw fish. So yeah,
Yeah.
we have the door is wide open to make sushi with just about anything plant-based. And I've got all kinds of different fillings for today that I made that you can't really get in too many restaurants because it's so strange that restaurants that have a huge menu of 100 things, their veggie sushi is cucumber roll and avocado roll.
Right, exactly.
Like, what
Well,
the
Mikuni's has a few more. I
Yeah,
think maybe they have four or six, but like you say, it's the cucumber, it's the avocado, cucumber, and you're lucky maybe
carrots.
there's a
Yeah,
little carrot occasionally, but
yeah.
that's what vegan sushi is. Yeah.
Right. And it's so boring. And, I have all kinds of different things I can put in. Like I've made air fried sweet potatoes, simmered mushrooms. I made some little roasted tofu squares. I have some chickpea filling. I have some greens. I have some, vegetables, carrots and cucumbers and avocado, the typical things. But we can put all those together and we can make the most amazing sushi roll that is just filled with seasoned vegetables and dip it in a tiny bit of our, soy sauce or not. We can use other things. I know you don't use soy sauce, but I have the Date Lady chili sauce. I have
That I love that. Was
Nino's. Yeah.
because I'm allergic to soy, but
Mhm.
I love the chili sauce from I Love Date Lady on sushi.
Right. Yeah, and that works fine. So we can change it up any way we want. And that there's a lot of freedom now that we are not in some boring box where everything has to be, traditional. And just like, you sent me that picture of the sushi wrap where you take a big piece of seaweed and cut a slit and fold it, or sushi burritos, or there's something called onigirazu, which is everything's in the middle of a piece of seaweed and folded over and cut in half. It's a sushi sandwich. And then you created sushi nachos and sushi salad. And those are just all great examples of how sushi has come out of this little box and has become such a wonderful thing that you can make in any kind of format or with any ingredients you like.
Yeah, it's the best. It really is. Well, I can't wait for this
Okay.
demonstration. I've been waiting
All
a
right.
long time.
Okay. Well, I thought you were going to take a class at Mikuni Sushi.
I
Did you
am,
already?
but Mikuni's
Okay.
class is until July 16th.
Oh, all
I
right.
can't wait that long to make sushi.
Okay, so you'll be
Yeah.
prepared. All right, well, let me get started. And all of my recipes and everything are not in the show notes yet because it was too much information. So I'm going to have to trim it down a little bit and add maybe a link to get you all the information. So, but I'm going to go through some real basic stuff because what I find is that people don't enjoy making sushi or eating their own sushi because it doesn't taste as good as what they're used to in a restaurant. And a lot of that starts with the main ingredient in sushi, and that's the rice. And there's so many kinds of rice, so people always want to know, well, what kind of rice do you use for sushi? So first of all, traditionally white rice was used, and I use white rice. I'm not afraid to eat white rice or against it. You know, on occasion, I don't eat it every day. I do eat brown rice mostly, but sometimes being half Japanese, part of my heritage is eating white rice, so I'm never going to give it up. I love it too much. So I get really good quality sushi rice. This is one that I get at the Asian store. And there are all kinds of really good ones. The one I use today in my rice cooker is called Hitomebori. And that's another really excellent quality sushi rice or short grain rice. If you just use white rice, like jasmine rice or medium grain rice or long grain rice, it is not going to give you the kind of stickiness you need for sushi. So white rice is great. We're going to use that today, but we're also going to try another thing. This is called semi-brown rice, and it's a cross between white rice and brown rice. So it has the bran removed, but the germ is still there. And so it's a very light version of brown rice. So you're getting brown rice, but it looks more like white rice. So I have a bowl that I made earlier and put vinegar on and everything, and you can kind of see it. It is, you know, it's very pale and it's very light. So compared to regular brown rice, it's just a lot lighter. And, you know, we probably won't make a lot of any sushi rolls with it, but I just wanted you to see it because some people are just not willing to eat white rice for whatever reason, and that's okay. But get the best rice you can get, and then to cook it. And this is something that, you know, I wanted to spend a little time on because, you know, if you boil your rice and don't cook it properly and don't use the right amount of water, then what I've seen in a lot of my friends, they've made sushi and they'll bring it to something and the rice is all glued together because they use too much water and the rice is all like, you know, stuck together like glue, or it's so hard that it's falling apart like jasmine rice or something because they didn't have enough water. So you have to have the right amount of water. And in order to do that, it helps if you have a rice cooker or something that, you know, has a built-in measurement. So like my rice cooker, the measurement is built in. So you put the cups of rice in the rice cooker and there's like a level and you can't see it because it's way inside there. So just know that that's a really easy way to, you know, have the proper ratio of water to rice because that's really important and something that's often overlooked. And so if you don't have a Japanese rice cooker, which, you know, this one is Zojirushi. I've had this for many years. I also have instant pots. I also, you know, have other ways I can make rice on the stove, but I always go back to this one. But you can also make rice in the instant pot. Just be sure and use the right measurements that, you know, whatever the ratio of 3 cups, with me, it's 3 cups of rice, 3 cups of water, equal amounts of water. You don't want to use too much. I know in culinary school, they would tell us use, you know, 4 cups of water to 2 cups of rice, but that was not the Japanese sushi rice. So then the next step, cook your rice. And for sushi rice, it's important to cool it off and put vinegar in it because that's what makes it sushi rice. It has vinegar in it. And you have to find a way to cool it down enough to use it for your sushi. You can't just use it hot out of the pot. And you're not supposed to use cold sushi rice because sushi rice should be, as they said in the movie Jiro Dreams of Sushi, that they kept talking about sushi rice should be made, the sushi should be made when the rice is body temperature. So that's 98.6. So it's kind of not even cool. It's kind of semi-warm. So what I do when I'm making sushi is I cook the rice. It's fresh. It just finished cooking a few minutes ago. And then I'm going to take the amount I need and put it in my wooden sushi tub. And this is called a sushi oke, O-K-E. And it's a wooden tub. And the reason you use this is it's got a shallow bottom. And that helps the rice cool off. And if you use a metal pan or something, then it tends to not cool off. The vinegar doesn't get absorbed into the rice properly. And you could use a wooden salad bowl, like if you didn't have the sushi wooden bowl, like this is one of those Holland mill bowls. And you basically just wet it, like run some water over it and dry it and put your rice in there.
Why is that important? Because what I've been doing is, and I agree with you, I think using a rice cooker is the easiest way to cook rice in a foolproof manner. Because with an Instant Pot, I have to remember measurements, but with the rice cooker, there's these little lines for every cup. And I don't have the good rice cooker that you do. I have the $29 one called, I forget what it's called. It's from Costco, but it's always worked for me.
Great.
I had no idea that you had to do that with the rice. I've always been putting it, what I do is after the rice cooks, my rice cooker has a sushi rice setting, and I've been just using the organic sushi rice from Lundberg. And then I take the insert out, and when it starts to cool, I've just been putting the vinegar in there. So if I understand you, that's not the best way to do it.
You put the vinegar in what? The rice pot?
In the insert of the rice cooker as
Oh,
it's
no. You need to put it in something shallow. Like it could be a big wooden salad bowl, but those are usually not shallow on the bottom. So it really shouldn't be metal. It should be wood, whatever it is. So a big salad bowl would work, because what you want is the vinegar to coat each grain of rice. And you want to do that pretty quickly. So I'm going to put my vinegar on, and I know you don't use sugar and salt, but my vinegar is seasoned, and it has sugar and salt in it, and it's organic, and it comes already seasoned. It's just called organic seasoned rice vinegar. However, if you don't want to use sugar or salt in your vinegar, you can just use I use this organic rice vinegar.
Yeah, that's what I use. But so is your rice completely cool now from being in that?
No, it's still really hot.
It's hot. Okay, so you're actually stirring it in while it's hot, but you're putting it in a wooden bowl. Okay.
Right. And so now the traditional way to do it, of course, is with a wooden thing, and it's to pour the vinegar over the rice a little bit at a time. And the reason you do this is because you don't want all the vinegar to just go in one place. You want it to kind of go into every area. Oh, and I use about 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar for each cup of rice.
I was just going to ask you what the ratio is.
That's just what I like, but I like it to have a kind of a real taste of the vinegar, so that, I prefer it to have a strong vinegar taste, I guess.
Me too.
When you go to a sushi place, sometimes you can't even tell that, it's got vinegar in it because it doesn't have any taste. And then you gently toss the rice around, and then make sure that it's coating all your rice. And so what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to use a cutting motion with your paddle. You're not supposed to smash it or press it. You're just supposed to kind of lift it and then cut it, because you don't want it to become clumped together, and you don't want to smash it. So it's really important when you make sushi that your rice is all like separate little grains, and they have kind of a gelatinous finish, like a shiny finish, and they have a taste of the sushi vinegar. And of course, the traditional taste has that bit of salt and sugar, and that makes it kind of that sweet, salty, vinegary taste. And of course, that, back in hundreds of years ago, it was the rice that preserved the fish in the original sushi. It was, this really strong vinegared rice was packed in containers with fish, and it preserved the fish. And then later, sushi rice was eaten with the fish so as not to waste the rice. And then it became sushi with rice and fish. So, that's how it became vinegared rice, it was used to preserve food. So, you want to have that vinegar taste, and then it's not going to cool very fast like this. So the traditional thing to do once you get it to this point is to use a fan. I have like 50 of these fans, AJ, because I taught sushi classes for years here in my house, and at different places. I would go to people's houses and teach sushi. And so I'd give everybody a paper fan, but you cool the rice with the fan, and pretty soon all that vinegar is absorbed into the rice, and it looks beautiful. It's kind of plump, and it just, you can't really tell by looking at it. I can tell, but it starts kind of just developing this really nice texture. And then what you can also do at this point is taste it, because everybody has a different kind of preference. Some people may not like as much vinegar. That's the right amount for me. But you don't want to use your sushi rice when it's wet and you've just poured vinegar all over it. You have to give it time to absorb the vinegar. And that's while you're fanning it, you're trying to cool it off, get all the vinegar in it, and then it'll be ready to use. And plus you can't use really hot sushi rice on your seaweed because, everything you're using, all these raw vegetables or whatever you're using, and it won't be good. It has to be cool enough that you can use it, but it shouldn't be ice cold. You should never make your sushi rice ahead and, stick it somewhere or put it in the refrigerator, heaven forbid, because it will get really hard. And don't microwave it because it will never be the same. If you think, oh, I'll just make it ahead and put it in the microwave. People always want to make things ahead. And I tell them some things cannot be made ahead. Sushi rice is one. And you don't want to leave it sitting around forever either because, warm rice can develop bacteria. So for food safety, you don't want to make this early in the day and say, oh, I'm going to have sushi tonight, so I'm going to make my rice and let it sit here in the kitchen all day long. That's a bad idea. So anyway, we just fan it. And I remember doing this when I was a kid. My mother would say, do this, fan the sushi rice. And that was my job. I didn't mind doing it. Okay, and then once you've got it where it's pretty cool, like it's not hot anymore, but it's not cold, I have a cotton cloth. I buy these on Amazon by the dozens. They're just white, 100% cotton. And I only use them for cooking, culinary things. So that way they don't have any fabric softener or weird stuff on them. And then I just cover my bowl with this 100% cotton cloth it's been wet and wrung out. So it's moist, but it's not dripping wet. And what that will do is that will keep my sushi rice from drying out, because if you don't cover it with something, it's going to dry out. And the Japanese way is not to use plastic. So putting saran wrap over it is not something that you'd ever find in any kind of, Japanese sushi instruction. So use your cloth to cover up your rice and just let it sit, leave a little ventilation. So it's not just going to, be completely covered. I always leave a little opening, and that's the rice. So, I'd say that if you're paying attention to anything I do today, the most important thing is learn how to make really good sushi rice, brown rice or white rice. And my rice cooker has a brown rice level, and it has a semi-brown rice setting. So the Japanese recognize that Haiga brown rice, they call it semi-brown rice, and they even have a setting for it in the rice cooker. If you think you're going to be, oh, go ahead.
I was wondering if your rice cooker has a sushi setting like mine.
Yes, it does. It has white rice. Sushi rice is the same. For cooking it, yeah, it has a sushi rice setting for cooking, but even the level on the inside for putting how much water in, there's a level for sushi rice.
That's interesting because mine doesn't have a different water level for sushi. Mm-hmm. So you're saying it should be 1-to-1 for sushi.
Yeah. That's how I make it.
Yeah.
And that's how,
my sushi rice comes out sticky, but that's a good thing, right?
Yes, it should be. Yeah. The thing that I've seen that I think is a problem sometimes is it's too wet. That's the most common thing I've seen is the sushi rice is like, all gummy and stuck together. And I have the woman who does my hair, she said to me one time, she said, my sister makes really good sushi and brings it all the time, but the rice is all mushy and stuck together. So it's like one solid thing. I said, well, that's not good sushi then. But, at least she went to the trouble to make it. And this is my original book that I got years ago. And I love this book. I learned how to make a lot of stuff from this book, although it has fish and meat and stuff in it. Her technique, she's a Japanese woman who's taught this for many, many decades. And I loved her illustrations and her explanation of the sushi rice and everything. So highly recommend. And also I do have, my own plant-based Japanese in book form now on Amazon. So it tells how I make sushi in there. So if you want if you don't like show notes and all that stuff, you can actually get that book if you're interested.
That's a great book. It was part of the bundle.
Yeah, well, the ebook version was in the bundle, and then the publisher I work with said, "Oh, I just want to make it into a book so that I can bring it to my book fairs and whatever." I said, "Okay, that's fine."
Fabulous.
All right. So then the next thing is you have to decide what kind of sushi you're going to make. And what I wanted to do today, and this is what I talked about with Chef AJ, with you, is inside out rolls. Because that's what you see when you go places mostly. You see inside out rolls. And, you know, to make those, we're going to use seaweed. And we can't really use soy wrappers or that kind of thing if we're following an oil-free way of eating, because they do have some kind of, I remember looking at the package and seeing that it had some kind of oil, soy bran, rice bran oil, or some kind of oil is in soy wrappers. So they're really not a good substitute. So I'm using seaweed. And I find that people who don't think they like seaweed, if it's an inside out roll, they don't mind it so much because they don't see it. It's on the inside. So the best thing to do is get a fresh package of seaweed and open it right before you use it. Seaweed, once it hits the air, starts going soft, and then it's not going to be any good. Also, try to find a Japanese brand if you can. This is Yamamoto Yama, which has been around forever. I noticed like in Whole Foods and different places now, they have all this Gimme brand, Gimme, and I don't think that tastes very good. I always, whenever I bought it, it didn't taste very good. So I always try to find the Japanese companies because I think, I don't know what company makes that, but I never like it. And then we have to cut our seaweed in half if we're making inside out rolls, because we're only going to use a half a sheet. If you use a whole sheet of seaweed to make a roll, it's going to be gigantic. It's going to be like, you know, this big. Okay. If you use a whole roll. So that's going to be like one of those mega giant rolls. And I do make these futomaki, this real big veggie rolls like this, but that's not what we're going to do today. And then you have to cut it in half. And there are lines across the seaweed, and we're going to go by these lines. We're going to cut it exactly in half, like in between the center. I don't know if I could see it. My bright lights in here kind of make it hard. Okay, here we go. And then I have a stack of, you know, cut seaweed. It's all the half sheet. And that way I have that ready. So I'm going to set this here on my board. And don't let anything wet touch your seaweed, because once your seaweed gets soggy, it's not good. You don't want that. And then we have to then get our fillings that we're going to put inside our rolls. We have to decide what we're going to use. And so I've already got some things made, but I wanted to do a couple of things in front of you so you could see how I do it. For example, I have cucumbers because the roll's going to have cucumbers. And I had to show you this because it's funny. I'm growing Japanese cucumbers. And every day I go outside and pick at least double this amount of cucumbers from the garden. And they're skinny and they have very few seeds in them. So they're super sweet cucumbers. And I usually make pickles and different things with the cucumbers. So I haven't done that yet this year, but I'm going to have to pretty soon because I've been giving them to all my friends and they enjoy getting all my garden produce. But at some point, I'm going to have so much that they're going to say, no, thank you. I've had, you know, cucumbers every day this week. And then I eat them all the time. Like they're so good and sweet and seedless that I could just chop this up and eat it with nothing on it, no sauce, nothing, and it tastes really good. So that's what we're going to put in our sushi. And that's what you would find in Japanese sushi, is really good tasting sweet cucumbers, not bitter, seedy, giant, watery cucumber. You'd find something that tastes really good. And we're just going to cut it. I'm going to cut this in like 3 pieces and make kind of like matchstick pieces because they'll fit well in the sushi roll. And you saw that I didn't peel it all the way. I peeled, kind of semi-peeled it, so it would have some green on it. These kind of cucumbers don't have thick skins because they're just the type of cucumber they are. And so the skins are really thin and tender. So you can eat the skins, but I still think it looks better to have the contrast of both the dark and the light. So basically I'm cutting them into strips like this size, a couple inches, and I'm going to put them on my tray over here. I'll cut one more. This one's kind of crooked, so I'll cut the straighter one. But if you can't grow your own cucumbers, you can get the hothouse cucumbers. And those are the ones that you find in the store that they're usually individually wrapped. And what's good about the hothouse cucumbers is they don't have big seeds and they usually taste pretty sweet. So I use a lot of hothouse cucumbers too during the winter. Okay, so that's all we'll do with the cucumbers. So I've got my little pile of cucumbers. And then I'm going to do some carrot. And I know that purists would probably say, oh, carrots are really not a traditional Japanese sushi filling, and they're not. But, you know, we're plant-based, so we've got to put some vegetables in our sushi, and carrots are easy to find. Most people like them. And, you know, they're a nice addition to sushi, I think, if you don't overdo it. Like one sushi grocery store, sushi place, they put so many carrots in the sushi, I have to tell them to make me a custom made one. This is like at our Central Market grocery store. I'll tell the sushi guy, could you please make me a veggie roll and just use a little bit of carrots in it? And he'll make me a special one with a small amount of carrots. And that's, you can do that. You can ask them to make you a roll. Okay, so I'm going to use my mandolin. This is my Japanese mandolin. Well, it's a Ben Reiner Japanese style mandolin. It has the sharpest blade of anything I have. So I use a cut resistant glove because you can go from, you know, slow to fast and all of a sudden there goes your hand. So I do use a cut resistant glove, and I'm just making these nice little strips with it's a julienne blade. In fact, I'm not going to put them directly into this bowl because the bowl is slipping, but I'm just taking the fatter end of the the carrot, and I'm just going down the julienne blade. And you see, it makes these really fine cuts. And I have other mandolins, but none of them make as precise and fine looking pieces of carrots as this one. So if you need a really good mandolin, highly recommend this one because it's a lot more precise, and it's also really good for slicing. We're not going to do any slicing on it today. Now, the other safety measure for this, and I'll show it to you, and I do use it sometimes, in addition to the cut resistant glove, is, you know, they do make a shield. I had it out here somewhere. Oh, here it is. So, you know, you can always use their shield when you get down to a small piece, and then, you know, poke the shield into your food and use it. So don't ever, you know, get too close to your mandolin blade, because they warned us about that in culinary school. And one of my good friends, she had kind of a little lost the tip of her finger kind of accident, and not a lot, just a tiny bit, but it freaked me out. And I became a believer after that to really pay attention. And I always kind of, when I see the cooking shows, the Top Chef and all those cooking competitions, and people are using the mandolins and their hand is really close, I'm always like, oh, be careful, because I've seen what can happen. All right, so we got the carrots and we got the cucumbers, and then last we're going to cut up an avocado, because I want to have avocado on this. And I have my towel here. I want to show you what a sushi chef friend showed me about how to cut up the avocado and make it super neat. And that was, so what he did, cut it in half, cut it all the way. Oh, and always wash your avocado before you use it, because, you know, avocados are not clean on the outside. Lots of, you know, all the people that pick them up and squeeze them. Well,
that's a good point.
You know, just realize that there are a lot of people have handled your avocado before you got it. Okay, so then take your sharp knife. My knife is a Miyabi chef's knife. It's super sharp. And just cut like a tiny little sliver at the top. Don't go down too deep, just really thin. And then take your knife and go to each end. Very, very shallow cut, not a deep cut. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to peel it back. And what that does is that leaves you a very clean avocado. And then, because, you know, when you get your sushi with avocado in a sushi place, it's not all mushed up and weird looking, and it's all nice and neat and pretty. And that's how they do it. Well, that's how this person did it. And then you can slice it and it doesn't have that kind of mushy top. You haven't messed it up, you know, you haven't destroyed it in the process of cutting it. So if that's something that is helpful to you, it helped me because it made for a lot nicer sliced avocados. And even for any recipe, like if you were going to put your sliced avocados on a plate, they look a lot prettier when the top is pristine than when you have the top all smashed up. So even if you don't make sushi, use the avocado slicing technique because it's come in very handy. And then I'm going to slice the avocado in strips. So everything is in strips because we're making inside out rolls and we don't want anything really thick. And I'll tell you why when I'm making the roll, because anything that's super thick is going to make your roll so thick that it's not going to be rollable. It's not going to be a true neat inside out roll. It's going to get real sloppy. So make sure everything is either matchstick pieces, small, thin, whatever, so that you'll be able to roll your sushi. Because when I taught classes, it seemed like a big problem I always saw was that people couldn't get their roll to roll. They stuffed it too much. It's kind of like making spring rolls, you know, the summer rolls with rice paper wrappers, is that people would put so much stuffing in their rice paper rolls that they couldn't roll them. Okay, I'm going to wipe my cutting board off. All right, so now I have some actual combinations that I'm going to make today, but I'm going to show you all the fillings before I start making the different combinations. And I'm going to wipe my knife off because this process is you always want a really clean knife. And I'm even going to have a bowl with a cloth just for the purpose of keeping my knife clean, because if your knife is not clean, it's going to stick. Everything's going to stick to it. All right, so let's look at our fillings. I have the chickpea filling. I don't want to call it tuna, but you know, it's chickpeas with like a plant-based mayo. And then I have my cucumbers, carrots, and avocado that we just cut. I have some blanched greens that I've cooled. So these are the kind of greens I use for my daily Japanese greens. They're super greens. And I blanched them, put them in ice water, squeezed all the water out. So they're very dry, but they make a nice filling. And I also have kale chips. Now that sounds really weird. They're very crispy. If you bit into it, it would crunch. But kale chips take the place of, you know, a lot of times you go to a sushi place and they have spicy, crunchy roll, and they use tempura crumbles, which are deep fried. Well, this is my version of tempura crumbs that they put in crunchy sushi rolls. It's crunchy kale, and that gives it a nice texture. I also made—
That's such a good idea because at Mikuni, they do, it's not vegan, the crumbs, even though the sushi is vegan because the tempura had egg in it.
Yeah. So you can use those crumbs. You can just put them on your plate and stick your sushi roll in it and then have a little crunch, or you can put it in. I'm going to put it inside the sushi roll. I simmered some mushrooms and they're already done because I wouldn't have time to do this if I had to make the mushrooms and all the other fillings. And I just wanted to show you their shiitake mushrooms sliced and trumpet mushrooms. And the trumpet mushrooms, they look like this. They have a small top and a big long stem, and you cut the bottom off, the tough bottom, and then you slice them lengthwise. So they kind of look like that when you're after they've been sliced. So they're very, the texture of them is really nice and chewy. They're really good like in preparations where people want something that is chewy and substantial. In sandwiches, like, you know, a BLT, you could use this kind of mushroom and it gives you the replacement for the bacon. It's the mushroom and you don't have to fry it. So that's my trumpet mushrooms and shiitake mushrooms. I'll lay those on my plate here. I'm going to put all my toppings on this one tray so they'll be handy. And then I have a couple other things here. I have made Chef AJ's favorite Japanese sweet potato.
Oh my gosh, that'd be so amazing in sushi.
So, you know, it's Japanese sweet potatoes are purple on the outside, yellow on the inside. And then you, in this preparation, I kind of brush them, or I actually put them in a marinade of some tahini and a little bit of water and a pinch of salt, so they're kind of got a marinade, but I also tested it and put the sweet potatoes in some veggie broth. And I just put them in the air fryer for 10 minutes at 400, just in some veggie broth, and they were perfect. And also, the other thing about these is I par cooked them for about 3 minutes in boiling water. So they only took 10 minutes to cook in the air fryer. And what I discovered when I did this was they were really good just like this. Like to peel a sweet potato, cut it into little like French fry shapes, and put it in some veggie broth just to wet it, and then air fry it for 10 minutes. And you have the best tasting strips of sweet potato, like just for something to eat, like a snack. I loved it. And I hadn't even intended on it being that. It was just kind of for my sushi fillings. Okay, so I'm going to put a few of these here on my tray. And then last but not least, I have tofu. So a lot of people love tofu in their sushi. I noticed, Mikuni Sushi does a lot of inari tofu in their sushi. Well, I have to tell you that when you see inari, the word inari in your sushi, inari is fried soybean skins. It's like a form of tofu, but it's marinated and it's deep fried. And nobody really knows that, but it's got a high oil content. So anytime you see inari, and it like they make these inari wraps that go around sushi, people think, oh, that's vegan. It's made of tofu, but it's fried. So then I've taken some tofu and made some little thin pieces, and we could, cut a piece of that and put it on the top of a sushi roll. So I'll put a couple of these out and we'll try it and see if that works. I haven't done that before, but I thought that sounded good because the Mikuni Sushi in Sacramento makes a roll, and they put a piece of the inari sushi over the top of it, and it's kind of draped over the top. And I thought, well, that'd be cool to drape a piece of seaweed over the top, or sushi over the top. So that's all of that. So let's look at the toppings one more time. We have mushrooms, sweet potatoes, tofu, avocado, carrots, and cucumbers. And we have chickpea, and we have greens. And then we have kale, crispy kale, and then we have greens. So we have a lot of different things, and we're not going to make every roll with all these things. We're going to use different ones, and I'm going to change the view of my camera so that you could actually see what I'm doing when I'm making the sushi. Can you see that, Chef AJ, the sushi mat?
Yes.
Okay. All
I,
right.
it went, I figured I didn't have one, and that's when I decided to start doing sushi bowls.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And let me talk about the mat for a minute. Get my sushi rice over here where I could reach it. Oh, it's perfect. The sushi mat is really important because it's hard to really roll sushi without some kind of sushi mat. That's just part of the whole process. And, they come in different types. Like you can get a silicone one, like this one, and it works fine. I tested it. It works good. The good thing about this is you don't have to wrap it. Oh, here, I'm on the wrong camera. It looks like this, the silicone mat. The good thing about it is you don't have to wrap it in saran wrap. But on a regular sushi mat, you can't roll an inside out roll on it without wrapping it in plastic wrap, because the sushi will stick to the mat.
Okay,
So,
that makes sense.
yeah.
But a regular sushi, if it's the regular way, you can, because the
Right.
nori is now the
Right, exactly. So like the traditional sushi mat would be more like, this is a mini one, but it's more like this. It's just bamboo, and you just put your seaweed on it and roll it, no problem. But when they started messing around and making different things, and they made inside out roll, well, you have to wrap it, and you have to use a really, wide plastic wrap. Like saran wrap from the grocery store doesn't work well. It needs to be kind of extra wide. So I have stuff like that from Costco. It's like Chef, clear plastic wrap, and it's a lot wider than typical plastic wrap. So just to let you know, it's a lot harder when you use like, Glad wrap or something, because it's not very wide. And so it's hard to get it to lay down on the opposite side of your mat. So just be aware of that. And you might consider, because of that, just getting a silicone mat, because you don't have to worry about it then. Have a bowl of water handy. We're going to be using this water to wet our hands, because wet hands and this kind of rice do not go together well. And then I always have some kind of cloth towel that's wet, like one of my cotton cloth towels, or just a hand towel standing by, because your hands are going to get messy. And then I've got my seaweed nearby. You probably can't see that part, but it's right over here off to the side. And the main thing I want you to see is I want you to see me rolling the sushi. And so I've got my plastic mat, and then we're going to take our seaweed, and it has two sides. It has a rough side and a shiny side. And we're going to put the shiny side down, and we're going to put it kind of close to the edge of our mat. And you'll see why a little bit later. I'm also going to get my sesame seeds handy. So I'm going to sprinkle the outside with sesame seeds. These are roasted sesame seeds. Really, what the best thing to do is toast them in a pan before you use them, and they taste better. But because of all the other things I'm doing, I didn't do it this time. I also have black sesame seeds, so you could use either one. I'm using the white ones today. A chef friend of mine mixes white and black together and has like a container with a mixture of the white and black sesame seeds, and he'll use that on the outside, and that looks kind of cool. I like that. So the next thing we're going to do is we've got to get the rice onto the seaweed. And so wet your hands. Can you see my water bowl, or just, you probably can't see it, can you?
I can see a little bit of the water bowl.
Okay,
Yeah.
here's the water bowl. It's right here, and here's my cloth. And then I've got my rice bowl right here. It's off to the side. Or my sushi, okay. And I need a half a cup. So just to show you, I'm going to measure it. I don't measure it for myself because I know, but you don't want to use much more than that. You don't want to use much less, because you don't want to have to go back and forth and mess around getting rice onto your sushi, onto your nori. You just want to do it one time. And then I lightly wet my hands and kind of drip the water off. And I'm going to spread the rice on the seaweed very gently to cover the whole thing. And I may have even gotten a little extra rice this time, because it looks like it's almost too much. So I'm going to take some off, because I just want it to have one thin layer of rice all the way to the end, all the way to the edge. And when you're handling the rice, it's kind of like you're playing the piano. I don't play the piano, but that's what people have told me, that you're just gently pressing. You're not, smashing. And I'll see people sometimes, especially in grocery stores, they're smashing the rice down because it will stay together better and it will hold better. And then if you have to wet your hands and kind of blot them, do that. And I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch at the top with no rice on it. So make sure you spread your rice all the way to all the edges except the top edge. And that's important, because another beginner mistake is people will not spread all the way to the outside edges, and so their outside rolls are all flimsy and fall apart. Okay, so now remember our sesame seeds. We're going to sprinkle our sesame seeds on, not too heavy. And then we have to flip it over, because it's an inside out roll. We flip it over with that naked edge facing you. And now we can put anything we want on this roll. So I've got some sample rolls. I have a sweet potato. So I'm going to put a strip of sweet potato, and this sweet potato is not quite the whole length, but this one, well, that's a little short. I want it to fill the whole roll. So if you have to cut the end off, that's fine, because you can use it for another one. So this one's going to have sweet potato, some of our roasted tofu. We'll just put 2 of those. And if it sticks out at the end, we can cut it, because I really want these to be even. I don't want these to stick out at the end. So I'm just going to cut the ends off. And when you're by yourself, you just kind of eat those, but whatever. Set them in a little bowl. And then I think on this one, I wanted to have avocado and mushrooms. So I'm going to put some avocado, and I'm just kind of piling it up. And then mushroom. Remember my simmered shiitake and trumpet mushrooms? They can be a combination of both kinds of mushrooms. And they're just simmered in a little soy sauce and mirin. But if you don't want to use soy sauce and mirin and sugar and salt and stuff, everything I've done can be seasoned just the same way. You could season it with just a little you could simmer it in vegetable broth. You have to cook the mushrooms, but you can simmer them in vegetable broth. And then let's put some of our crunchy kale chips in here. Why not? That's different. Pretend like they're, tempura crumbs or something. I think that'll give it a nice little crunch. All right, we don't want to put too much because remember what I said, we have to roll this. And if we get too much in here, it's not going to go anywhere but make a big mess. Okay. So then the tricky part that people have trouble with is how do they roll it up so it stays together as a roll? So you have your mat and the edge of your seaweed at the same area. I think, can you see that, Chef AJ? Can you see the edge?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. And then you hold your hands over the middle ingredients as you're rolling it. And you want to see that the edge of your seaweed gets rolled over to the other piece of seaweed there. So you see how there's this edge of the seaweed here at the top, and there's an edge of the seaweed on the bottom. You want those two to meet as you're rolling, because then you're not going to have the problem of the seam busting open. See, so it's closed, and then we're going to kind of shape it. And that's what you see people doing is they're pressing the rice a little bit gently to make sure the roll stays together. So that's what you see with the sushi roll. And that was it. And the seam is at the bottom. You want to keep the seam at the bottom. And then another thing that I was taught was take your roll and bring it all the way to the edge on the side, and then kind of push in the sides. So your sides, your ends are kind of flat. Because otherwise, when you try to stand your sushi roll on its side, it's going to have stuff sticking out of it. And you don't want that. You want it to be flat in this preparation. So do it on both sides, bring it to the very end, bring your mat over it and just kind of push in the sides. And that will make it not, it won't have like beginner sushi rolls often will have like the ends are skinny and the middle's fat because they didn't put enough rice on the ends. You want it to be very even. And then we can shape it one more time. And then my friend that taught me a lot, he was a sushi chef in a restaurant. What he would do is he would take the sushi mat, put it over the roll, and he would pull the end here. He would just kind of pull it. And he would pull this part and pull this part, and that would really make a tight, neat roll. So that's what you'll see. Sushi chefs have these tricks that they don't tell the rest of us about unless you happen to get lucky. And he was at my culinary school doing a class one day, and I happened to be there helping out doing something, and he showed me how to do that. And so I took a class from him, a private class. I said, I know how to do all this, but you know so much more than I do, so I want to take a class from you. And so I did, and it was great, and I learned a lot. Okay, so then you're done with this one. If you're going to make a bunch of them, what I do, because normally I make like 10 sushi rolls. Are we frozen? Are we okay?
No, that is amazing, actually.
Okay,
I mean, that looks exactly like it does in the restaurant.
Yeah. So when you're done with your roll, what you should do is put them on another surface. I'm not going to do this because I'm going to cut this one and show you, but you should put your roll on a tray and cover it with saran wrap. At this time, use your saran wrap because otherwise your sushi roll is going to dry out. So another important thing is cutting it. I'm going to show you how to do that real quick, and then we'll make another roll, but I just want to make sure you know how to cut it because I know this has gone on already for a long time. Let me get another cutting board. I don't usually cut on this board here. It's like my display board. Okay, so I'm going to use this board to cut it. And this is very important. This is another thing that people mess up. And this is why sushi burritos exist because people didn't want to have to cut sushi. So what I did was I took my knife, and you probably didn't see this, I'll show you, is my sharp, super sharp knife. Can you see my knife, Chef AJ?
You bet. And
Okay.
what is that knife called again?
It's a Miyabi, M-I-Y-A-B-I, Miyabi chef's knife. I'm going to put some water on it. And then, I don't want it to be dripping wet, but I want it to have water on it. And then I'm going to take the knife and I'm going to cut my sushi roll in half. And I'm not going to apply pressure because I don't want to smash the roll. If you hit it too hard with a knife, it's going to smash it. And then you have to keep your knife clean, even if you have to wipe it off after every couple rolls. Because if your knife is dirty, it's not going to cut through. It's going to stick, and you don't want it to stick. So this is why sushi is expensive, because it's kind of labor intensive. You can throw your sushi together and make a a sushi burrito and make one giant thing and not have to deal with all of this, but you don't have the artistic appeal of the beautiful sushi plated, on a nice plate with a dish or whatever. So, that way all the rolls are even. I cut it in half, cut each half in half, and then cut those halves in half. And now I can plate it and I can put it on. I have this little sushi dish and I can just set it up like this so you could see the inside and you can see all the ingredients. Oops. Now, after I said all that, I kind of overfilled it and it's fallen apart a little bit, but don't despair. That happens. If you have one that didn't stick together well, you can just set it aside. Like I had one.
All right, Julia, I was looking at the chat and I wasn't looking at you for that moment. And so Susanna said, when you were rolling, they were seeing the top of your head and not the roll. So if you roll another one.
Oh, they were seeing the top of my head?
Yeah, that's what she said. 'Cause I was looking at the chat at that time and not at you. So I apologize.
Okay, so my hands are here. So I guess I need to move it up this way.
No, your hands are fine. We can see everything. Perfect.
That's weird. Okay. All right. So this is that first one. I had one that kind of fell apart because I think adding that extra kale was a little bit too much. So we won't put that on. Well, we'll put it on here.
Well, you can just eat that one.
Yeah, later. Okay, but see, so this, you can all see this. This is roll number one. But that really is the important technique, is that you get your roll and make it tight, but not so tight you're smashing all your rice down. So I'll make another one. And keep your surfaces clean because, the thing about rice is it will stick to everything. I'm sure everybody knows that, especially sushi rice. Okay, so we'll make one more for now. And the other thing is you have your water here, because in between you've got to kind of, rinse off your hands. It's not any good. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay, so we'll make another one. And the rough side up. And then remember, I always put the seaweed. Okay, can you see everything I'm doing, Chef AJ?
I can. And would you say that the regular rolls are a little bit easier to make than these?
Not really.
The same then, huh?
The inside out rolls are probably easier to make because
why do you say that?
Because people have a lot of trouble getting the regular rolls to stay together. Because you're seaweed on seaweed, and this actually will roll together easier. That's why a lot of people only make inside out rolls, because they're actually the easiest sushi rolls to make.
Did not know that.
So they're good for beginners. People seem to have more success with them.
So yeah, you fold it in half. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, you get it in half, and then remember, we put the rice on one side. Don't press it down. Don't be tempted to smash it down. Flip it over. Oh, wait, I forgot something.
You forgot the sesame seeds?
Sesame seeds, yeah. Sesame seeds. Then you flip it over. And this one, we can put some other veggies on it. We can see how it looks with carrots. And the other thing, when you're putting the filling in, is be sure and put the filling all the way to the ends, because that's something that I've learned is you tend to put more of the filling in the middle and then you're skimpy on the ends. And so then they're skinny. So
and those last two pieces of sushi always have less filling. I noticed that. We go to Sprouts every Wednesday because it's $5 sushi day. I did notice the two. Well, normally it's $7.99. I think it's 8 pieces. And I did notice that both end pieces did not have very many pieces of filling. Yep. Okay. We can put some mushrooms. That's just typical. Here, let's put some thinner mushrooms. And I'm putting all these things in because I made them, but you don't have to put half these things. Like if there are things you don't like, I always tell people, make it the way you like it. And then we can just put some of our greens in. So this is more like just all veggies, no tofu, no sweet potatoes. And let's say you like one thing a lot. Like let's say you love
Sweet potatoes. Nothing wrong with making just a sweet potato roll or an avocado roll or just a single ingredient roll, because that used to be about the only kind of roll you would get in Japan is like, cucumber roll, but it would not be inside out. And that was a popular roll, is just, one stick of cucumber in the roll or one piece of fish. And then the other one that's popular that I've made in my, cookbook and different places is called futomaki. And that is a seaweed on the outside, and it's a thick roll. So you make the whole thing, and you can put like mung bean, egg, and carrots and cucumbers and all kinds of stuff. And it's a big thick roll, and those are really good too. Okay, so remember, we're going to pull it up. We're going to make sure that the seaweed meets the other seaweed. And see, I didn't put as much stuff in this one, so hopefully it'll be more successful. So we're meeting the seaweed, and no other ingredients should be there because that will keep it from meeting. And then you roll it over. So that was the thing that oftentimes people don't see, that part, is that the two ends aren't meeting. And then remember, you can shape it. At this point, you could shape it more square. You can make it more round. And then the other trick was to pull it. I don't know if you can see this, where you kind of pull each end to get it to be very firm. So there you go. And this one is not as rounded, so we'll round it up. So you can always go back and improve the shape of it. And then the other part was to take it to the end, because remember, we want the ends to be firm and not falling apart, and then kind of push in the ends, and that will make that part a lot neater if you push that in. And we'll do the other side, bring it to the other side, push that in. And if there's something sticking out, you probably need to trim it a little bit, because on this one, we're going to have our rolls sitting down. And if there's a bunch of stuff sticking out, they won't lay flat. Now, I make other rolls where stuff is sticking out on purpose. And in that case, you can cut it, and all the stuff sticking out becomes like part of the roll, like pieces of lettuce and different things. And then I'll cut this one. So, this is the sushi roll, and then I'm going to kind of talk about how we can eat it. I'll put some pieces on a plate, and I'll get that plate and talk about things to serve with your sushi roll. And we could make these all day long, and I have all these fillings and stuff. Well, tonight, fortunately, is my book club night.
What book are you reading?
The book is Christian Hannah, The Women, and it's about nurses in Vietnam and the Vietnam War. And the main character is a Vietnam nurse in 1965. It's very good.
Wow, it's so cool that so many of my guests like you and Lauren Burnett go to book clubs. I love that.
Yeah, and we have to bring food, and what they're serving tonight for their food is chicken salad croissants.
Oh my.
So, they never have anything I eat typically. No, I shouldn't say never, but very rarely do they have anything that I'm able to eat. So I always bring some kind of Asian food.
I bet they love it, right?
They love it. Yeah, they always are happy to eat my food. Okay, so this one we'll put on this plate here.
That is a cute plate.
Yeah, it's got eggplants on it.
Yep.
Some kind of.
Well, now you explain why sushi is so expensive, because there is time involved.
Yeah, and precision. It has to look a certain way, or else, nobody's going to eat it. It's supposed to be artistic looking, not just some kind of thrown together thing. And so you see my ends are going to have the ends sticking up because they look pretty. They have a little piece of avocado. I'll put this one here. And then I can put soy sauce plate on here. That one's a little too big. So I could put a little one here on the end, or go here and put it like that. So you see my little ends have pieces sticking up, and that's not a bad thing. You can say, well, it shouldn't look like that, but that doesn't bother me. And, I've seen sushi rolls in restaurants that don't look much better than that. So I always think, yeah, it could look better, but, it looks fine and it's going to taste good. And then we can serve it with our soy sauce. I use a low sodium soy sauce. And then the other thing that everybody expects to have is some kind of wasabi. Now, the typical Japanese wasabi, I don't have my open one. The typical Japanese wasabi is, and I'm going to go back to the regular camera.
That looks so good, and it's lunchtime here now. And I had
Okay.
sushi yesterday. There's no more sushi.
Uh-oh.
Have you ever tried it in a wrap?
No, not like that, but I've had sushi burritos, so it's kind of similar. Sushi burrito is where you put all the ingredients inside seaweed, and then it's just like a wrap with
So
seaweed on
you
the
just kind of
outside.
like roll it big then.
Yeah, yeah, you just take all your ingredients and put it in one big piece of seaweed, roll it up, and then you cut it in half. And then you just eat it like a burrito.
That's
So they
cool.
sell those at Whole Foods.
Did you ever see the thing where you take a piece of sushi, it's a square, you cut it halfway in the middle, and then you
Right,
fold.
yeah. That's the onigirazu. That's
That's
called it.
really,
Yeah.
I love making those.
Those are called sushi sandwiches, or onigirazu is the technical term. Okay, so I have this. This is like the most popular wasabi that you can buy already prepared, and it's S&B wasabi. I'm trying to open this.
I get that at Whole Foods.
Yeah, they have it in a lot of places now. But yeah, I think I got mine at Whole Foods too. So anyway, you can put a little dab of wasabi next to your soy sauce, because most people expect to have wasabi. Now, the true wasabi is a root, and it's very expensive, and it tastes nothing like this kind of stuff. Like, we're used to having powdered wasabi, which is nothing more than horseradish and mustard and some different dyes and spices and stuff. It's not really good compared to the real thing, apparently. But I can't just go buy wasabi root. Maybe I can now, but I never see it in even the gourmet grocery store. So then the other addition that we can have here, and I know time is going by really fast, Chef AJ.
No rush here.
The other big addition that people like is sushi ginger. And I wanted to talk about other sauces. I know some of you don't use soy sauce. So if you don't use soy sauce, you have other options. I know Chef AJ has talked about Date Lady sweet chili sauce, and I've used that, and that would be a good substitute for soy sauce. You can also, where did I put that? I have coconut aminos. Some people don't like soy sauce, and so they get soy-free coconut aminos, and that tastes good, but it does have sodium. And then there's another one called no soy, soy-free soy sauce, and it's made from molasses, apple cider vinegar, and a couple other ingredients, some kelp, but it does have sodium. It's not sodium-free. So those are, but they're, if you don't want to use soy sauce, you can use those things. And you can also use the like teriyaki balsamic vinegar.
Oh,
Would work
yes.
too.
I forgot to mention that. That is
Yeah.
very good. I've
Yeah.
used that as well.
I have a bunch of those, California balsamics, and the teriyaki one can also be used. And then I made my own ginger, and I was going to talk about that. I don't have time to do a whole ginger demo, but I'm going to tell you the steps I took to make the ginger. The one that I always have around is by the Ginger People. It's organic ginger. It does
That's
have
my favorite.
yeah.
It comes like, I like the shredded better than the sliced. What do
Oh
you
yeah,
like?
yeah. I like the sliced.
You like the bigger pieces? Okay.
It has 1 gram of sugar and 10 grams of sodium. So when I look at that, I think no big deal to me. That's just like a trace amount. And I don't sweat that because I'm not a purist, I'm not a SOS free person. I tend to kind of keep that lower, but I'm not completely 100%, SOS free. So, that doesn't really bother me.
Well, it
ginger.
doesn't bother me either, just so you
Yeah.
know.
Okay. So then, thinking about how to make your own ginger, making your own ginger gets kind of complicated. And I have to tell you, because first of all, the kind of ginger that's used to make this ginger people ginger and store-bought ginger, it's a special kind of ginger. It's young ginger. It's not this kind of ginger. Okay. The kind of ginger we can get in the store is got a thicker skin. It's been around for a while. It's not young. And so if you go to some Asian markets or special places, you can get the young ginger, and young ginger has like pink little knobs on it instead of brown. So you can tell it's real light colored. And you can make really good sushi ginger if you can find the young ginger. And if I've grown ginger before and had it, and I've had the young, and very new, just dig it up and use it. Don't cure it or anything, and it's delicious. But if you use this kind of ginger, you peel it first. This one's not peeled, but I'm just going to demonstrate. And then you have to get really thin strips of your ginger. Well, mature ginger is kind of woody, so it's hard to get really thin strips. I've seen people that say use a Y vegetable peeler to get your thin strips, but you see they kind of fall apart when you're trying to do it. So then I didn't think that worked very well. So I ended up using my mandolin, and I used my recipe, which is will be in the show notes. So I ended up, making a lot of thin pieces of ginger using the mandolin, and then you have to parboil it. So I boiled the ginger for 5 minutes to tenderize it, and then drained it really well and kind of let it dry out on some paper towels. And then after that, to season it, the typical seasoning is salt and sugar. So if you're trying to not use salt and sugar, then what I used for this is date sugar and rice vinegar. So it does have rice vinegar and date sugar. It doesn't have any salt. It doesn't have any sugar. And it is kind of a pink color. I think you can see it's kind of pink.
Yes, that's what it looks like. The Eden brand comes out pink.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice color, and it's very thin. I got it to be pretty thin. So it doesn't taste bad, but without the salt, I think the salt gives it that little extra something that it needs. But it's okay. I mean, I use Date Lady date sugar, which is nothing more than dehydrated dates. I use just your organic rice vinegar, date sugar, and my recipe will be on there. And then to make it pink, I use like a pinch of ground up beets. I have this organic beetroot that's ground up, and it makes things look pink, and it doesn't add any artificial coloring or anything. So that's how I got it to be that color. And how does it taste? It tastes pretty good, actually. It's after a few days. At first, when I made it, I thought, oh, this doesn't taste good at all. And then after it sat in the refrigerator for about 5 days, it actually tastes pretty good. But the ginger is too mature. It would taste so much better with young ginger that didn't have that woody texture, because the older ginger gets, the more it has kind of a woody texture to it. Like, when you grate ginger, it leaves behind all this fiber. Well, you don't want to eat that. You don't want to eat that fibrous part of the ginger. It's not very good mouthfeel. So if you're going to use my ginger recipe, see if you can find young ginger. But if you don't want to go to all that trouble, because, ginger is not easy to slice thin, because look how irregular shaped it is. So it took me a long time to slice the ginger to make this ginger. I had to really play around with it. That's why I'm not demonstrating it, because it would take a whole show just to mess with this ginger. And then when I, compared this to the ginger people ginger, this is so much better.
How do you think they slice it so thin? How do you think they're doing that?
Well, they've got a machine. They've got some kind of, and they're using young ginger. So they probably have a special, harvest of ginger, that super young ginger is easier to slice because it doesn't have all the mature knobs and stuff on it. So I would say, if you're a purist and don't want to have any sugar and salt, make your own and use rice vinegar and date sugar, and it tastes good. But just find some young ginger, or, if you're going to eat, you're not going to eat a whole jar of it. So if you're going to eat a small portion of ginger with your sushi, get this one. It's organic. It doesn't have any dyes in it. It has a trace amount of the sugar. It's probably less than other things that you've eaten that you don't really realize there's sugar in it. And then you have, to serve this, we have our sushi with our soy sauce. We have our wasabi, and then we have our ginger. Now, when you're eating sushi, you're not supposed to eat it with chopsticks, really. You can, and nobody's going to say anything to you if you eat it with the chopsticks. But really, sushi is meant to be eaten as a finger food. And it's really meant to be eaten, just one bite at a time. So like, you pick up your sushi and you put it in your soy sauce. If you want to dip it in soy sauce, I usually put the wasabi in my soy sauce, even though that may not be considered the best thing. And then just put the whole thing in your mouth.
That's what I do. I put the little ginger piece on top of each one.
Mm-hmm. Now, the ginger is intended to be a palate cleanser. So the traditional use of the ginger was when people were eating different kinds of fish. And in between, like one strong tasting fish like mackerel, then you eat a piece of ginger and it gets rid of the taste of the strong fish. And then you go on to the next piece of fish. So it wasn't ever intended to be eaten as a food by itself. It was kind of like they don't give you much because the intention is you eat it in between to clean your palate for different tastes. But
I didn't know that because I like to put it on the actual sushi and then I dip it. There's a question from Dominique. If you
okay.
don't have a super sharp knife, can you use a serrated knife?
You can, but it's probably going to mash your sushi up, truthfully. You know, I've had like Cutco knives or something in the past and used those because that's all I had years ago. And it worked okay, but remember, you want to have clean edges on your sushi. You don't want it to be smashed in or misshapen. And the best way to do that is with a super sharp knife. And so, you know, I sharpened my knife right before the show. Like I have this cheap, you know, knife sharpener, but it's like a honer. And I did this many times, and my knife is so sharp, it could cut a piece of newspaper. So if you're serious about making things that are like restaurant quality or something that gourmet level, it's really important to get a knife and keep it really sharp. Just have one really good knife if you can get one. We have a store in our town called the House of Blades. And if you buy a knife there, they'll give you a lifetime sharpening card. And you can bring your knife anytime you want it and they'll sharpen it for free if you bought it there. So, you know, that's one way to keep your knife sharp. And I bet there's places like that in other cities. But yeah, you know, the thing I really wanted to focus on today was not so much, you know, sushi rolling is important, and I showed you how to do that. Basically, don't put too much in the filling, because I did the first one, and you see, even with all my experience, it didn't hold together as well. It had too many things in it. The second one, I put fewer things in it, and it's much better. It, you know, it has the right amount, so it stayed together, it didn't fall apart. So that's important, and practice is so important. Like in the real world of sushi, people can't even make sushi in a restaurant in Japan. They require years of training. I mean, literally years. They'll have somebody make rice for a few years before they even let them touch anything else. They won't even let them handle making anything related to sushi. So that's how serious an art form it is. So it's really hard to just gather all the ingredients and make perfect sushi the first time. It really requires practice. And if you don't want to go to all the trouble of doing that, you know, remember, you can make hand rolls. You know, you can take all, and I'll make one really quick. You can take the sushi ingredients and you can put all these things out for your guests. You know, strips of sushi, all the sushi fillings, and you can just lay them all out on a bunch of platters, and they just take a piece of the sushi. They can put some of the ingredients on top of the sushi, carrots, cucumbers, avocado. And you don't have to be so precise here because it's not going to require it to be cut. A sweet potato. And then you basically just take it and you make a little triangle. And I always think of it like folding the flag. You know, you're just kind of, and then you have a perfect little cone.
Oh my God, I love that. Looks
That's
delicious.
how quick you can make your own sushi. You don't have to do all this other stuff. You can put all the pretty stuff out on a tray like this. You can put a stack of nice fresh seaweed and put a stack of that. You can set out your soy sauce. You could set out your wasabi, ginger, your chickpea filling, your kale, anything you have. And then people can just, you know, get a little plate and they can put the fillings they like on their plate and get a few sheets of seaweed, and they can make their hand roll, tamaki it's called.
Wow.
And there are
Did
places.
you cut those nori in half, or is that the size that came?
This is, remember in the very beginning, I
Yeah.
pulled out that great big square and I cut them in half
Yeah.
exactly.
I'm just because
Yeah.
some people join late, so I'm
Oh,
just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
kind of pointing
So,
out that that's
yes,
not the size of actual
yeah, I'll
nori.
show you. So the
Because
actual,
you could make a hand roll with a full size sheet is what I'm asking.
you probably can't very well because it's too big,
It's too
you
big.
know,
Okay. But you can
with,
make the sandwich with the full
yes.
sheet.
So the full sheet is this big. The half sheet is like this. So the half sheet makes a good hand roll. Most people are not big fans of sushi sandwiches, Americans especially, because,
Oh my,
or people I know,
I
because they,
love them because they're so easy to make.
yeah, well, it's the seaweed thing. Like I hear this all the time from people. Well, I like sushi, but I don't really like seaweed. So they'd rather just have like a ball of sushi, like an onigiri or something, where it's the ball with something inside of it, or they want to have a soy wrapper or something that's not seaweed. So with the sushi sandwich, you basically pile all the ingredients in the middle and then you just fold it over and it just makes like a big, like a folded burrito almost, but it's all one package. And then you cut it in half and then it looks like a sandwich. So, you can do that. But I think for the amount of food, because, you can only eat a certain amount of seaweed. Let's say that you wanted to have 5 or 6 different hand rolls and make different fillings in them. Because like right now I have mushrooms, tofu, sweet potatoes, avocados, carrots, cucumbers, kale, greens, chickpeas. So let's say you wanted to have 4 or 5 different recipes. And what I would do is I would put up a board and have a list of the combinations like I did for the class today. I have, California roll, cucumber, avocado, chickpeas, and I have spicy mayo. So, I put this out and this is my cashew mayo. And I would have this sitting out because some, people like sauces. And I have teriyaki sauce. So I might put that out and, people could put teriyaki sauce on it. And they can make, the sweet potato, they can make veggie roll with just veggies, or they can make one with tofu, kind of like the Mikuni sushi with, tofu, asparagus, and whatever they put in theirs. But so that way you can have a big variety. Boy, just looking at that makes me want to eat it so bad. All the sauces on there. But yeah, that you don't have to make these inside out sushi rolls, but if you look at the prices of sushi, like I actually pulled this up because I have been to the sushi place in California that Chef AJ goes to when I was at a food bloggers convention. And I looked at their current menu. One Saving Nemo roll, which has avocado, cucumber, and tofu, and teriyaki sauce is $13.50. So,
So I know when we eat at McCooney's, it's like $100. It's
yeah.
crazy.
So, if you wanted to have, like, I have a big family, I have children, grandchildren, their partners. When people come over to my house to eat, it's usually 12 people. Well, there's no way I could get 12 people's worth of sushi and without spending hundreds of dollars because they eat a lot too. They're big eaters. But I could set this up like I have it right now with toppings, seaweed, and I would roll it for them because, I do it. But, I could teach them how to roll their own sushi, or I could give them, the wrappers and say, make hand rolls, just roll it up in a cone. Most people can figure that out really quickly and make your own tamaki sushi, but you don't even have to do that. You can take your seaweed and cut it smaller and just roll it into a cylinder. There's a hand roll sushi restaurant here in Fort Worth, and it's in the top 100 sushi restaurants in America, and they serve hand rolls, and they're made just like this. They're just a cylinder of seaweed with fillings in the middle. And they even put a vegan combo on their menu for me that has like 3 or 4 vegan options. And I'll go in there and they'll make me all these beautiful hand rolls. And hand rolls are so easy because it's just the rice and the filling rolled up, no accuracy, no technique, just put your stuff in there, roll it in the seaweed and eat it. But the important thing is have the best rice. Remember, I spent a lot of time on having the absolute best rice you can get. a really good quality sushi rice, organic, delicious vinegar, make it correctly, fan it. It's nice and sticky. You know, it works really well. You can see every grain of rice. So that's important. It's not dry. It's not too wet. So, you know, have the best sushi rice you can make. Have the, you know, beautiful fillings with fresh vegetables. Remember, you can get brown rice and you can make brown sushi rice. You can just remember to make it in a rice cooker. The brown rice is delicious, and I'll make some brown rice rolls for tonight. Rice cooker is the best. Instant pot can be a little iffy. Sometimes I think the rice is a little bit too wet or something. It's the texture's not right to me, but I'm a very, you know, exacting person when it comes to it because I know what I'm looking for. So I don't really prefer it, but if that's all you have, then, you know, you might be okay with it. I think cooking it stovetop is preferable to cooking it in an Instant Pot because you have more control over it, but then it requires you watch it. So if you're thinking about making a lot of sushi, I would say to be sure and get good equipment, practice, or figure out methods like, you know, the hand roll or sushi burrito, or even like I liked Chef AJ when you made a sushi salad, you know, or sushi nachos, you know, and just took the flavor of sushi, which is vinegared rice and different kind of vegetables, and, you know, just kind of the spirit of sushi that you love, which is the vinegared rice, and pair it with whatever you like, put it in a bowl, have it as a salad, put it in a wrap like Lisa's raw wraps. That looks absolutely stunning. And you know, I think that would be great. And you took like a store-bought sushi roll and put it inside the wrap with a bunch of vegetables. And so it made a really big, like a hand salad with a sushi component, which I thought that you know looked very
It was
delicious.
mind-blowing how good it is. I
Yeah.
cannot tell you. So Carol says that sprouts are a nice addition to a sushi roll and wants to know if you can make sushi without rice.
Well, remember sushi, the word sushi means vinegared rice. So if you want to make a nori roll, and I've had to tell one of my friends, Rachel, she's calling stuff like anything wrapped in seaweed sushi. And I said, no, you can't call it sushi because there's no rice. You have to call it a seaweed wrap. So yeah, you could take your seaweed and you could put all these things in your seaweed: tofu, sweet potatoes, mushrooms, avocado, carrots, and cucumber. We could put all that in here. We could roll it up just like I rolled it up with rice and eat it. And we just call that a nori wrap. We wouldn't call it sushi because there's no rice in it.
Thank you. And what about cauliflower rice? That's how they taught us at culinary school because I went to a raw culinary school.
Well, again, you know, it's really not sushi rice. So technically, I probably wouldn't call it sushi because cauliflower really isn't rice, but it's riced cauliflower.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
I
you know,
know.
you could call it that with cauliflower rice.
Jennifer says, what are your thoughts on rolling sushi with soy paper? Some family members only like soy paper.
Okay, I talked about that earlier, but soy wrappers have oil in them. The last ones I looked at had some rice bran oil or something. So that's why I don't include them, because they have an oil component. But for people that don't care about that, aren't oil free, soy paper is an alternative, and you can buy all different flavors of it, and restaurants will serve it. You could also use rice paper.
I was thinking rice paper. I like rice paper because it had, when I don't know if you saw the show with Chef Angelique Miller from Zest last week, where she taught us how to do these raw wraps. And she explained that like sometimes when a rice paper tears, they try to push it together, you know, with wet fingers, or sometimes they'll put a second one. And I liked it better with two because it was like more hard,
right, yeah,
more toothsome.
Sure. Yeah, you can make a double rice paper wrapper, or you can also have a rice paper, wet it, and put seaweed on it to put it on seaweed. So you can have like the double thing, seaweed and rice paper.
Do you have any plans to come out here? I'll take you to McCooney's.
Oh, I would love that, Chef AJ, but I don't have any plans to go there anytime soon. I am going to Japan.
What for what
in the
and for how
fall.
long? For how long?
For about 2 weeks with my husband and another couple. And so we're going to travel all over Japan. And I'm going to try to find as many plant-based options and vegan things. And they have a lot of stuff now, apparently. I've been doing a lot of research, but
I went there in 1994, I believe. I did a television show there once. It was
wow.
fabulous. You said you used to live in California, but where?
Oh, I grew up in California. I lived in the Monterey Peninsula.
Oh,
So I went to Seaside High School, and I lived in a town called Marina, which is, I think, 5 or 6 miles from Monterey. And I lived there from the time I was 10 until I went into the military when I was 19, so about 9 years. And I've never
wow.
lived in California. Well, I didn't, then I lived in Victorville, near Southern California. I lived there for a couple of years in the Air Force, but
That's
not
so
since
cool.
the
Hey,
80s.
show your book again because Karen's saying, I'd love to learn how to make onigiri. Is it shown in your Japanese cookbook?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's in I'm not sure if it's in this one. This is my first one. Yeah, onigiri is in here. So yeah, it's on page 34. There's a whole thing about onigiri and all the fillings. So yeah, and sushi's in here too. So yeah,
Nice. Here's a question from Anne. Do you have any tips for quinoa rolls? I'm not sure what a quinoa roll is.
okay, so some people don't use rice that much and they use other grains. So that's green tea. So could you use quinoa in place of rice? I've never done it, but I think you can take any grain and you could use it in your sushi, but it might not cut into like this shape because it's not going to have the right texture. So this is where if you're going to use quinoa instead of rice, I would, use the hand roll. I would put my quinoa on here and put all my sushi fillings, and I would just roll it like this. I think a hand roll is better because the bottom is closed, where it's a cone shape, because you can close the bottom and, you can hold the bottom because quinoa is kind of fine. It might fall out the bottom. So yeah, for things like quinoa, farro, any kind of grain that's not rice, I would use the hand roll technique instead of a inside out roll because it's not going to form up to have that sushi layer that you're looking for.
I poked around a bit and you actually did the onigiri on my show 3 months
I did, yes, yeah.
and it is in your plant-based Japanese 2 book.
Mhm.
Have you ever made dessert sushi?
No, I have not made dessert sushi, but
I make
I need
everything
to.
into sushi.
Yeah,
I'm just obsessed with sushi. I gotta
yeah,
tell you, and I think partly because I like eating with my hands.
yeah.
Um, Marley says, sorry if you already spoke about this. Do you have cucumber rolls, rolls made out of thin cucumbers in your book?
No, I don't have that. You can do that. You can take a vegetable peeler and, mandolin or whatever, and you can make strips of cucumber and fill it with sushi ingredients, but I don't have that in my book. I only use seaweed now. I used to use soy paper and I quit using that, but mainly I just use seaweed. Mine is more traditional. But, as we talked about today, there are so many ways you can adapt the flavor or the spirit of sushi in whatever preparation you like. And if that means having a thin sliced cucumber as the outside, yeah, that works. You just have to, it's a lot more technique involved. You have to make it paper thin. You have to line them all up, overlapping, and then you put your ingredients on it and roll it up. So it can be a little tricky. I wouldn't suggest it for a beginner, but if you've got the skills to cut your cucumber that thin and make it look good, then, go for it.
Yeah, you're amazing. Your husband must be the luckiest man.
He's not a big vegetable eater. The funny thing is I practiced my sushi the other day because I was just wanting to, do the best I could on your show. So I did a practice
Well, the
test
best,
run.
that's why we literally call this episode the best vegan sushi, because you did the best vegan
Oh,
sushi.
thank you. And so I had this big tray of sushi at the end, and I was going out to dinner that night, meeting some friends, so I couldn't eat it for dinner. So I put it in a group text to the friends I walk with, and I said, I made this sushi, but nobody's here to eat it because my husband didn't want it because he doesn't eat like, vegetable sushi. He doesn't really like it. And immediately one of my friends said, I'll come by and get it. And so she took it and she and her husband had it for dinner and they loved it. So
Oh
my
my,
husband will eat things with tofu, avocado, he'll eat like a California style roll. He'll be fine, but he doesn't really like all the mushrooms and greens and stuff in his sushi. I
Wow.
like it like that. I think
Oh,
to me, the more stuff you put in, like if you just ate these sweet potato sticks and, tofu and avocado just by itself, that just makes the best meal right there with a bowl of rice. So you don't
well,
even have to
I'm with
put
you.
anything.
People think I'm like this strict purist. I've always eaten white rice. I've never not eaten white rice, and I will always continue to eat white rice because it's my favorite rice.
Yeah. Me too, Chef AJ.
I mean,
I've
people
just,
did not get fat from eating white rice. Look at all
no.
the Asians. And, people are worried they can get organic. There's, if they're worried about I mean, I love
Mhm.
white rice. It's my
Yeah.
favorite rice. It's a true comfort. I will eat other rices, black, brown, wild, red, but if given the choice, it will always be white.
The obesity rate in Japan is like 3 or 4%. And white rice is still eaten pretty much every
That's
day,
what Dr.
sometimes twice
McDougall
a day.
said. That's what Dr.
Yeah.
McDougall said. It's been anyway. I don't know why people, well,
Yeah.
people are still afraid of carbs. And
Right.
are you familiar with the work of Dr. Walter Kempner? He
Oh
reversed
yeah,
diabetes
yeah.
and
The rice
obesity, feeding
diet. Yeah.
people not only white rice, but white rice with sugar and fruit
Right. Yeah.
juice. So
I know. I have heard that. Yeah.
it's the best. Oh, I wish you lived
Hmm.
closer. I would be right over. You know it.
Yeah. Well, if I ever do come to California, and I have been, in your area before for a couple of conferences and things, I'll definitely let you know way ahead of time so
Well,
that
we have a
we can
conference the
go.
7th of July. Why don't you come to that one? And
Oh, hey, I'm going to be doing a show at the farmers market in my town that weekend. So
okay.
I'm already committed, but yeah, that would have been great.
Well, you are extraordinarily talented, and I hope that I get to meet you in person one day.
I'd love that.
And happy birthday. Your birthday was just a few days ago.
Yes, I turned 70 on June 8th. I had a big party here. My husband did most of the arrangements. I had 2 chefs cater it. So I had someone in here making sushi right where I'm standing from a restaurant that my friend owns. And we had all these handmade dumplings and tofu bao buns and tofu fried rice, no oil, everything plant-based that I wanted. There were some other things that other people ate, but there was mostly, I'd say 80% of the food was plant-based and vegan cakes. And it was just wonderful. All my family was here, which is hard to get them all together sometimes. And
Well, I
I'm just,
saw the pictures on Facebook. They looked
yeah.
amazing. And of course, I love I mainly look at your pictures to look at your dogs.
Oh yeah, well, they're
They're so
my,
cute.
I love them. And how's Bailey doing? Is he,
Oh, she's,
she,
it's a slow recovery, but thank you for asking. Your puppy got so big so fast.
mm-hmm. Yeah, he weighs like 50 something pounds and he's almost 7 months old and he's not a little puppy anymore. So
I
now
know.
I'm like, you grew up too fast. Where's my little puppy?
I
And now he's so
know.
big and
That's what you got to get a small dog because then
Mhm.
they're like having a puppy the whole
Yeah,
time. So,
yeah.
well, thank you so much. I
You're welcome.
cannot wait to take the class at McCooney's and between this video and the class, practice my skills. But
Oh yeah, you'll be
it
fine.
can be learned. It can be
Mhm.
learned for sure.
Yes.
All right.
All
Thanks.
right, Chef AJ, I'll work on the show notes and shorten them
Yeah,
up
yeah,
and
because
give you
guys,
that.
we'll get more stuff in the show notes soon. She's going to work on it. So, check back for the exact recipes or really watch the video because truthfully, a recipe for something like this is not going to help them. They do need to watch. This is a visual kind of
Mhm.
recipe. We could write it down, but it's really something you have to see and actually
Yeah.
practice.
Right. And that's how I learned because I had all these books and stuff and what my mother taught me, but I didn't really improve my skills until I started actually studying it with somebody and looking at the actual techniques and practicing it and doing things a specific way. And that really seemed to help more than anything.
Yeah, it was just a great present. You're a natural teacher. I'm going to tell
Well, thank you.
McCooney's about you. No.
Oh.
Thanks.
Chef AJ, I did receive the award this year for the Texas Chefs Association chapter as Educator of the Year.
That's
So,
wonderful.
but I thought, well, I'm not a traditional culinary educator. I mean, I'm doing YouTube and Facebook or Zoom videos and stuff. And they said, well, you have a wide reach and you're teaching people all over the world. And so I thought, okay, great. So anyway, it's never
That
too
is
late to have another career.
That is fantastic. I love it. All right. Thanks, Julia. And
All
thanks
right, take
all of
care.
you. Yep, thank you. Thanks to all of
All
you for
right.
watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. If you've ordered my book, please save your receipt because those over $1,000 worth of bonuses will be ready soon. If you haven't, please check it out. I'd really appreciate the pre-orders to become a New York Times bestseller. And please come back a bit earlier tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time for Q&A with Dr. Ron Weiss. We call the show The Doctor Is In. Take care, everybody, and happy sushi making.